Welcome back to our workshop. I've got a large, oversized roll-top desk here in my small workshop. It's a bit of a challenge to work in here. This is over 5.5 feet long, so the challenge here is the roll top has broken. They do wear out over time, so what I need to do is take that apart and repair it and put it back together to get this back in working order. Now we've got a number of projects lined up on our channel. I'll share those with you later in the video, and I've also got a spot here that needs to be touched up. Some battery acid ate away at the finish, so I'll fix that up and we'll get this back to the customer. Stick with me, I'll show you how it's done.
As a furniture repair business, we're opening the doors to our workshop to show you the tools and techniques to repair furniture.
The front rail here, you can see this has been broken off.
We give you tips to make your repair projects easier. Let's get into the workshop and start fixing furniture.
Sponsored by Kennedy Hardware, offering restoration hardware for antique furniture. Lori and I just came back from a wonderful summer vacation, and I'll share some of those details with you later in the video. Now, as I mentioned, this is an oversized desk. It's 5.5 feet long, 3 feet deep, so it's fairly large, and it weighs probably about 200 pounds. So it's very difficult to move. As a result of that, I've had to take the insulation off of my garage door. I typically keep the insulation on in the summertime to keep the heat out, and in the wintertime it keeps the heat in. So the process I use here is fairly complex in terms of how I convert this. So I recorded on video of how I actually got this in here. We'll take a look at that and then we'll come back and start taking this apart. A roll-top desk is known for tambours. So these are slots of wood, and it rolls in channel on the ends here, and it's held together with some fabric. Now the fabric does wear down and break down over time, so this fabric needs to be removed and put back together again. Now, in order to take apart a roll-top desk, the top is always separated from the gallery. So there are screws underneath here that will separate these parts, because this door has to roll out the channel from the bottom. So that'll allow me to get into it. Now, I did notice that the top here is held on by screws at the end, and there's a stop here. So this might prevent it from coming forward. So I'm probably gonna have to take that top off as well. The gallery also has some screws in it, so it can be taken apart. So all of these components can be taken apart, and the reason that is so this can be serviced. I'll undo the screws and start taking it apart. I've got the desk blocked up on some wheeled carts here. That just allows me to move it around because I work in a small shop. I got 6 screws out of the cap here, so let's see. It should come off. Yeah, but it's heavy. So let's take a look here. So here's the front rail of the tambour. You can see how that slides. And this detail, I love to see this. So this is a clip here that allows wood movement. So the piece on the top is expanding and contracting, and this allows it to move. So these clips are really good to see. If you don't do that, you'll end up with pieces of wood splitting. So the person who built this really knew what they were doing. This rail on the front here is thicker than tambours. So if I lift it beyond this, there we can see how it rolls. So this block here, I'm suspecting will prevent it from being serviced through the back. which means I have to take it off the front. But let me look in the back here just to make sure. Okay, so if you follow the slot down, you can see there's a block on either side there, and that'll prevent that header rail from going through. Now that slot serves a purpose. The tambour does push down there and it unlocks drawers that are in the pedestal base. I don't have those, so I can't show that to you, but I've got another video that shows how all that works. I'll leave a link in the video description. Now that I've confirmed the tambour won't roll through the back for servicing, what I have to do is separate the desktop from the gallery so that I can slide this out. All the screws are out here, so I should be able to slide this forward. I'll just take this out before I do that. It's still hung up on something. If I lift this up, you can see there's some dowel pins here, so I just need to prop this up and get it out of those dowels. And now I can slide it out. You can see one dowel pin, and there's another one at the back there. And then this back panel sits in a dado across the back here. There's another pin back there, another one here. So I can now slide this out. So I'll slide this forward just beyond this point here. Give myself a little bit of space, and then the tambour will come out. Just like that. I now have to carefully spin this out of the way so I can work at the workbench. Now we can lay the tambour down the workbench and we can look at the fabric. This is the part here that was in the desk, and here's the extra part that had broken off. So you can see the fabric is fairly worn. It was done in sections, so this is all one section here, and then this piece here is overlapped on that one. And you can see as the fabric ran out on this side here, there's another overlap here. So 3 sections. We'll see if we can get this done in one. But the key part here is separating the handle at the base. So it looks like there's a tambour in a dado that already has the fabric on it, and it's got nails across here. So I need to pull those nails out so I can slide out the tambour. The best tool for something like this is a cat's paw. It allows you to get under the head of the nail, and then you can pull it out. Just like that. With all the nails pulled out, this should slide out. Oh. Maybe there's some glue in there. Let me see. If I use a pair of pliers, let me see if I can lever that out. No. Now, I was told this piece was refinished several times, so it could be that the finish is helping hold it in. So I'll score that, but as I take this fabric off, I'll get some vinegar in there, see if I can pull that out. To pull the fabric off, I'm just going to start at this corner here because it's worn out the most. And this would have been put on with hide glue. So it's just a matter of pulling off as much as I can. And then what I'll do is saturate it with vinegar, reactivate that hide glue, and then I can pull it off. Well, I've got most of the fabric off now. The next step is to scrape off any excess glue here. It's all crumbly because it's hide glue. And then where I've got any fabric that's sticking, I'll put some vinegar on that and let it soak in. I need to be able to soak in vinegar at the edge here where that dado is to be able to pull those pieces apart as well. You can see there's also a little bit of a gap in here. I was told that this roll-top desk was for a post office. So this is meant for a letter to slide through. So when I put new fabric on here, I'll have to make sure I've got an opening there to allow that to function. To work on this back piece here, I need to make sure these all stay in sequence, and they could easily get bunched up and confused. So I've got a bench hook here that's just going to stabilize the pieces that are underneath here and allow me to take the last few here and bring them forward. So now they can rest up against that and I can work on these details. So there are 3 pieces left here. This one, and the one that's in that dado. So I'm just pulling up the fabric close to that groove, and then I'm going to saturate the inside here with white vinegar. So this white vinegar will soften up that hide glue and hopefully release this so I can pull it apart. Well, the vinegar isn't doing anything along here in terms of loosening it up. So change of plans. What I'm going to do is use this material because it's firmly in here as a base to glue. So I'll glue this on the first couple of tambour slats, and then I'll take my fabric that I'm going to put on and bring it right to that edge and overlay it. That way I've got 2 layers of fabric there, and that will hold it all together. Before I do anything else, what I want to do is clean off the tambour slats. So when you're dealing with tambour doors, because the slats have little grooves in between them, they're very difficult to clean. So this is the best time to clean them all. So we'll take this out. I've got some hot soapy water here. That's a mild detergent, so that's the best thing to use when you're cleaning off furniture. I'll give each of the edges a scrub, and then we can move on to the next step. When cleaning off furniture parts, what I recommend is just using a damp cloth. Don't get it really saturated. And then as soon as you've cleaned it, wipe off the excess moisture. That's looking nice. I've got another sheet of plywood here, and I'm going to use this to help me glue the front here. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because this front edge here is thicker than the slats. So I need to make up the difference in height so they're both on the same plane. So if I line these up here, bring it back a little bit. Get this just over the edge. Now, those are level. So that's what I need for a gluing surface. So I need to clamp this on here so it's not going to move. And I can get these tightly squeezed together. And then we can glue it up. So I've got my clamping strategy here. What I want to do is just mark out where the glue needs to be. So it's all across here. So I'm using hide glue on this, and hide glue, HIDE glue, is protein based, and it's what was originally used on furniture before the chemical industry started producing glue. And it's the best glue for this job right here, because the next time someone needs to work on this, it can be undone. And if you try to use yellow glue, carpenter's glue, it just won't stick when there's existing glue. So I'll flip this back, get out my glue bottle, spread on the glue. I have to do this really quick. We use a different technique once we get to the rest of the fabric. The key thing when gluing up pieces like this is that the end is square. That way the tambour is going to work properly. So I've only got a few pieces here, but when I glue up the larger piece, I'll show you the technique I use to make sure that it's going to work for a large area. Now I'm going to use a roller here. Make good contact between the fabric and the glue. And now we'll clamp it. So I want these pieces touching, but I don't need a tremendous amount of pressure here. I just need enough that I can pull that fabric relatively tight. But if you clamp these too tight, the pieces will roll and they won't be flat. So I'm just stretching the fabric now to get them tight across all the slats. Making sure, again, we've got good contact between the fabric and the wood. And then I'm going to let this sit overnight. Let the glue dry. I'm also adding blocks here with some weight on them. And that will help make sure those slats are all kept flat and level. I've let this sit overnight and I've got a nice strong bond with that fabric to the tambours. The next step is to trim off the excess loose pieces, and then what I need to do is work out my clamping strategy. When you're working with tambours and you've got these slats, you need to make sure you clamp them together so you get a nice tight fit. So I'll work that out on the workbench here of how I'm going to clamp those, keep them all in place, and once that's ready, I can apply the glue and the fabric. Now, one of the challenges of working with tambours is making sure they don't want to pop up. So the weight on these is keeping them flat, but putting weight on something that's 30 inches across is difficult. So I have a strategy I'm going to work on the ends to hopefully keep them all in place. So I've got all the loose parts trimmed off now, and I'll put this back on the bench and get the plywood out of the way. I've got a backsplash on my bench here. I'm going to use that for clamping. So I need to squeeze all these parts together, but I'm going to use this last part here as a place to clamp them because I don't need to put glue here. I just put glue from here forward. So I have to create a cleat here that's going to hold them down and also hold them square, so all of these are lined up and they'll work properly once they're inserted into the desk. Here I've got a piece of wood that's set a little bit lower than the tambours, but it allows me to get these lined up. And then what I've got is just a scrap piece of maple here. I'll put this on this part here, clamp it down, and it will work. Now this last tambour here is thicker. It's got, I think, a stop on it. So I'm going to leave this one off and glue this one on at the very end. This will allow me to get everything lined up here nice and tight and snug, and we'll deal with that at the end. Now for the other end, you can see it's just off the edge of my workbench, so I just need to sandwich a piece of wood on the bottom and the top, clamp those together, and that will keep them in line. So the next step is to clamp these in place, and because this is sitting high, I'll allow a couple of these to come down on the right angle here, start my clamping here, and then what we can do is squeeze all of them that way. The last part of the clamping system is to be able to provide the pressure to keep these all nice and tight together. So I need to put some clamping pressure at the front to make that happen. I've got some large dimension poplar here, so I can use this in my face vise, and that'll give us some strong support. I'll put this in the gap, and then I'll fill the rest with wedges here to provide that final clamping. I've now got everything exactly where I want it. The next step is to mask off the ends of the tambours that run in the channel. You want to make sure it's going to run as smoothly as possible, so you want to keep glue out. And then what I'll do is vacuum this off, prepare it for the glue, and measure out the fabric to make sure we've got enough fabric and it's going to fit properly, and then we're ready for the glue up. The fabric that I'm using is a linen, and it's important to use a linen on something like this because linen is woven in a pattern that has angles. So if this were just a piece of canvas, it can easily tear across the tambour slats. But linen won't do that. So it's the strongest material for something like this to ensure it's going to last as long as possible. So I want enough fabric that I'm overlapping all the sides. I've got just enough here on the width. I've got enough on the end. We're good. So there's the male slot opening here. And cut that out afterwards. So we've got enough fabric. We're ready for the glue. I've covered a piece of wood in heavy-duty tinfoil because I'm going to use a roller to apply the glue. If you put the glue on the slats like this, you run the risk that they could get glue seeping in between, and then you've got a cleanup issue. So apply it here, then roll it on. I've got to move through this very quickly. I've got about 10 minutes to roll it on, put on the fabric. So I'll shoot the video where I can, but my primary focus is getting this done quickly. The lid is now glued down, and it needs 24 hours for this glue to come to full strength to make sure I've got the best possible bond with the tambour slats. Now, I'd mentioned before that Lori and I just returned from vacation. We love to kayak, and we were kayaking for a week on an Ontario lake. It's a wonderful place to rejuvenate and get our energy back and really enjoy the outdoors. While we were on the vacation, we met with Kim a couple of times. She's someone from Chardon, Ohio, and she's another business owner. So we had some great conversations with her. She runs a business called Spinner's Good Times Diner, and her restaurant was featured on America's Best Restaurants, a YouTube channel.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Wow, okay. So, it is so rude to chew with your mouth full, but that, who cares? So, these are just 3 of the items.
3 of the items, yes.
You have a full menu. It's breakfast and lunch, right?
Breakfast and lunch. We are open Tuesday through Saturday from 7 to 2, and on Sundays we're open from 8 to 2.
Got
it. It gets pretty wild and crazy in here, and everybody has a lot of fun.
That's the way it's supposed to be. And the fact that you'd mentioned before, you have so many people who come in, you really know the customers.
Yes, we do. Our customers are more like family. We have a lot of people that just come in. We know what they want. We say hi when they're coming in the door, and their first name basis. And our waitresses know them. They play the jukebox. We've had people doing the stroll up and down the floor. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
The next step for me is to work on this desktop. There was a battery left on here, and the battery acid leaked out and caused some damage, so I need to disguise that as best as possible. The first thing I want to do is clean the area, and I also want to be able to judge the color of what's going on here. So you can see there's dust here, and I'm using mineral spirits to dampen this, and this is what a clear finish will look like. So when you get it damp, if you just put a clear finish on, you can tell that's not going to match. So I do need to stain it to get it to match as best possible here. I'll just give it a light sanding first, and I'll get my stains. So I'm seeing some of the area here is darker than what the natural wood would be, and that's going to mess up the staining process. So I've got 600 grit sandpaper here. I'm just going to sand that back a little bit, clean off any residue that might be on the surface, and then we'll have clear grain that we're working with to be able to repair the finish. Wipe it again with the mineral spirits, dry it off. Okay, let that sit for a few minutes, and then I'll get out the stain. Now that I've sanded this, you can see some of the areas have dark flecks in them, and some of them don't. Now these dark flecks are part of the grain, so I need to get those dark flecks back in there before I can apply the top color. You'll also see that there are some lighter marks here. This is a ray fleck in the oak. So what I'm going to do is start with a dark color. I'm just going to quickly put it across here. And then what I want to do is wipe it off across the grain. So I want to leave it in the grain. So what this does is it sets the grain in those areas. See, I've now got dark marks in as a background color. And then I can work on the foreground color after that. So now what I'm going to do is come in with my coloring tone. Stain matching is a difficult thing, and we have a membership program that's available for people to join. And we've got some live sessions coming up in September 2024, and we're going to talk about stain matching. There's a number of different things that happen when you're trying to match stain. So we're going to go through that in a live session, so people can ask questions as we go through the discussion. If you're interested in that, I'll leave a link in the video description. You can check out our Fixing Furniture community. It's a membership program that has a number of different benefits to it, including reference sheets, live sessions, a community that you can chat with others in. So check it out at fixingfurniture.com. Next I'm going to pat on a little bit of shellac. I use garnet shellac. You can see how dark and rich that is. And we'll see how this comes in. Pretty close. Needs a little bit more tinting though. I've done some toning work here with a stain, so I'm going to let this sit overnight, and tomorrow morning what we'll do is come back and put the shellac on top of this, and we'll work on the tambour. It's now time to trim off the excess material here. The glue's had lots of time to dry, so I can take the masking tape off and get out a ruler so we can make some nice clean lines here. Now to make sure I'm not severing the material here, what I'm doing is just riding up this ledge a little bit with the ruler so that I'm cutting against this piece here and not actually inside the groove where the fabric runs. On the side here, you can see I've got a bit of a margin here before the edge. So what I'll do is I'll just mark this with my pencil, and then I can cut it from the top side using the ruler and the knife. Now, I want to preserve the front edge of this fabric because I still have that last piece to glue on. So here's the front edge. This is where the last tambour slot goes. I can now pull out the wedges. And what I need to do now is lift up all of this tambour so it's off the bench, so I can get this last piece in here. So as I mentioned before, it's got an additional step here that makes it taller. So I just need to make space for it, and then I can glue the tambour here. Once it's dried, I can reassemble the desk. Okay, so that gives me the height that I need. Now, to glue this in here, what I also need is to bring this clamping back from the vise here. I'll get this set up, get the wedges set up, and then I can apply the glue. I'm just trimming off excess material here so I don't have any pressure put on the part that I'm gluing up here. Okay, and now, it's funny, just with one slat here you can see that this wants to push up. So after I put the glue on here and the fabric down, I have to put some weight on this to get that leveled out and get it straight. So time for the glue. I'll put it on with a brush and then flatten it out. I can now move on to wiping shellac on the stain to see how close to perfection I got. So you can see this is the area here that I touched up. Let's wipe on shellac and see how it looks. I'll put on a few more coats of shellac, but then I need to let it cure before I can rub it out and get it the same sheen as the rest of the desk. Now this needs to dry for the day, so I can't do any more work in my small workshop. I just don't have the space for it. So I'm going to go over and do some video editing. I film and edit all of my own videos. A 50-60 minute video typically contains 200 to 300 scenes. So I've got a lot to put together there, but I pride myself in working as high quality as I can. If you've got any suggestions or recommendations, I'd love to hear them. Wedges are very useful in the workshop, and you can make these yourself, but it's difficult to make them safely. I've got a video dedicated to showing you how to make them safely. And if you're looking for small wedges like this, these are chairback wedges. We do sell them on our website as well. I'll leave a link to both of those in the video description. I can now trim off this excess material. I'll just line up my ruler and trim it off with a knife. The last step I need to go through before I put the tambour back in here is to clean out the channels, clean off the ends of the tambours to make sure there's no debris in there that would be grinding, and then apply some wax. Now, I just use candle wax when I do this. You want to avoid using beeswax because it is somewhat sticky, and furniture wax isn't really great for this type of thing. So I find candle wax the best for lubricating these channels. I use a little bit of mineral spirits to clean off these edges here. And what I'll do is clean out the channels as well, and then apply the wax. I've also got a split stile over here that I'll have to glue up when I put this all back together again, so it's in good shape. I almost forgot about the mouse slot in here. It's hard to see, but let me see if I can make that more visible. So here's the one side of the mouse slot. And then here's the other side. So I have to cut around this. So if anybody wants to put some mail in here, they can do that. And I want to make sure that the end here is round to prevent any potential splitting along the tambour here. Now we get to turn this right side up and we can put it inside the desk. So here you can see it rolling. Now there's a section here that doesn't want to roll, so I just need to loosen those up a little bit. That'll be just a little bit of glue in between there. Okay, so those are rolling. There's another section there. So they'll also loosen up once they go on the track. So let's take this over to the desk and get it put in. So this being oak, it's fairly heavy, but once I get it in this track, it'll take the weight, and then I can just push it up and into the space. Oh, I need a bit more space at the front here. There we go. My glue bottle's in the way. Okay, so now I can apply glue to that back corner, get this clamped up, and screw it together. So I'm using high glue on the stile here that's come apart. Looks like it's come apart before, and it's been glued once before. So I've just cleaned off the joint. We'll apply some additional hide glue, which reactivates the old hide glue, which is the advantage of using hide glue. It's the only glue that you can do that with. So it'll make sure that this will come back together again, and it'll be solid for the customer. So now I can shift this back into place, and I have to get these dowels into the dowel pin holes. It's going to take a little bit of shifting here to get all the parts lined up, back and forth, side to side. Okay, so that one's lined up. Now I just need this other one lined up here. It's a little bit out of square, so I'll push it over from this side. There we go. Now we can put the screws in. I'll do the same thing on this side, and then at the back corner get that clamped, and then we can test the tambour. When I have to clamp something up this long, it requires some creative clamping. So it's a matter of getting the clamps nested together so that you can get tension across the length of this. I'll show you what I mean. I'll come down this end here, squeeze in, and now what I can do is nest this clamp in here. Put this clamp over top of this one. I need a little more length. Okay, it's in there. And now it doesn't matter which one of these I tighten. I've now got tension across this whole piece to tighten up this corner. I'll put this clamp on here just to keep those together, and we're good. I've added a clamp here front to back and a clamp here as well. So with everything secure, we can now test the tambour. Yeah, that's sliding nice and smooth. You can really feel the weight of it though when you start to lift it up. Just the mass of this desk. As I said, it's 3 feet deep, it's 5.5 feet wide, so it really is a big desk. Now, we'll take a look at this flaw here. There's a couple of spots here that I'll touch up, but just to be safe, I'm going to clamp this on here, and that'll prevent this from wanting to pull back any further than that. So here's the area that I repaired. It's stained pretty well, but if you're looking for absolute perfection on a finish, what you need to do is strip the whole finish off and start over again. But this is an example of how you can repair a flaw. Now there is chatoyance going on, so you get different views from different angles. If I change it slightly here, you can see how the color changes. So I could make this look perfect by just keeping my camera in just the right spot, but I want to make sure you understand what this looks like from different angles. If you'd like to learn about how to do stain matching and about the products that I use, join our Fixing Furniture community at fixingfurniture.com. Once the glue dries, I'll put the cap on, but the last thing I want to do is just touch up a few of the spots where you can see a bit of the fabric. I'll do that with stain and we'll be all done. Disguising these areas is simple. Just use a fine paintbrush, a little bit of stain, and they disappear. To reward you for sticking around to the end of this project, I'm going to show you a few projects I've got coming up. This is a steamer trunk that needs a lot of TLC. It's been damaged on the inside, damaged on the outside, there's some pieces missing, so we're going to go through how to restore a trunk like this. We've also got a delivery coming to us from Trafalgar Castle School. We've done some previous restoration work for them in Trafalgar Castle, a wonderful historic building, so you'll see that in an upcoming video. So we've got a lot of content coming up. Subscribe and turn the bell notification on to get notified when these new videos come out. And if you'd like to join our member program, you get these videos before they hit YouTube, so you get early access to them and you can watch them without any commercials. Thank you for watching Fixing Furniture.